stop training more. I know that goes against everything that you've been told, because probably you've been told to do more reps, more sessions, more hours if you're not seeing the results that you want. That is a bit of the zeitgeist of modern fitness. Work harder, stay longer, push through. But what you rarely hear anybody speak about is that more is not the answer. Actually, doing more is simply a sign that your training system is leaking. And in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly why this is and what to do is instead, so that you can actually compress a lot of time whilst also seeing better results than you've currently been having. Now, first off, who am I? If you're new to the channel, I'm Tim, and I help men who are fed up with the physical issues that they got from more traditional types of fitness to reclaim or regain a athletic, lean, and pain-free body in less than 1.5 hours. And we do this by using extremely precise signaling over two physical capacities that are fundamental to how you move, and more on that in a second. But the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because for years I also operated under the same umbrella. I often thought that, more time equaled better results. That's always what I've heard. Previously, when I did more the traditional weightlifting route as well, but also when I got exposed to newer forms of training. If I couldn't do a handstand, put in more reps. If you're suffering from stiff hips, which I've done a lot, open them up more with more sets, more sessions per week. Or immobile shoulders, also something that you can see clearly here with the handstand, something I had to deal with a lot. Add more volume. And that's something I did. So because I was so passionate, I scaled up my training sessions to 6, eventually to 10 hours a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. But what I didn't know then, and what I do know now, is that there is a major problem or consequence with this approach, and that is accumulating more time also means accumulating more fatigue, more stress on a system that also is being exposed to other stressors. So your nervous system, it doesn't differentiate between the stress that you evoke from a physical stressor versus an emotional stressor versus a mental stressor, right? So it all falls under this same bucket. And because you're accumulating more stress, what happens is that in a week or over a week's time, there is just far less time that you can actually spend on the other part, maybe even the more, almost as important, maybe even more important, the recovery part. So yeah, did it work for me, training that much? Yes, I will definitely not lie about this. I got results. I managed to unlock a lot of skills that I was after. I got a lot stronger, but again, it came at the expense that I was often very sore. My joints didn't feel like they were in the best possible place, and there was just an extreme amount of motivation that I had to summon in order to show up for the sessions, for the classes, for the program that I was in. So it was always something that I felt like I had to chase with everything that I had in order to keep up with all of the rep sets and sessions that I did. And that was something I was cool with until there was a big pivot in my life that really exposed the leakage in this training system, as you will. And that was a switch, and that was when I became a dad. And it was actually after a couple of weeks that it completely changed the game for me, because I had a kid, I had a business to run, I had a family to show up for, and of course, I think every parent will notice your sleeping schedule is a bit compromised. And if you have 4 to 6 hours of sleep, you're lucky. At least that was something I faced. So what happened is that 10-hour training week it just simply wasn't sustainable anymore. And when I was in this process and I was already helping other men with, this pursuit of transitioning from a traditional fitness approach towards an approach that helps them acquire that athletic body, I also just asked myself, if I have a hard time keeping up with this pace, how are other men with similar responsibilities, 9 to 5 jobs, family members that need to take care of, family that have to be, financially supported, etc., etc., how are they supposed to achieve similar results if they have just far less time? So I had to find a different way. And I had to also face an uncomfortable truth that I was living in just a mismatched system. And this system was designed for professional athletes, people whose only purpose is to drive physical performance forward so that they can be at the top, win games, pursue the best of the best. And that was never my goal with embarking on this movement slash new way of movement journey, because I love movement. I love training, but I love my family more. So I wasn't willing to sacrifice this, and that led me to re-alter something that is much more applicable for the modern man. And that is how I experimented with doing less, scaling down towards a couple of movement patterns that just have the highest bang for your buck in terms of improving on the two fundamental movement capacities that we want, which one is building strength over a full range of motion to make sure that you're both stimulating tissue at the end of the joints or near the joints, connective tissue, as the grander middle section, the skeletal muscle. And the second one is that you want to improve or enhance your brain and nervous system capacity to coordinate this system that you have, this structure that you have, in the most efficient way possible in relation to space. Those two are fundamental. If you really think about it, those two are at the core of all the movements that you can express. So when I started to scale back, I went from 10 hours to 4 hours by accident, because simply I had a family, I had to cut time. But what I started to notice is that, I can actually push more. So this experiment led me to really wanting to dive into this more and more. And I cut back to 2 hours and eventually cut back to 1.5 hours in total. And to be honest, the results still shock me, because I cut away all the fluff. I cut away filler sets, warm-ups, just that simply didn't serve me at any moment in time. I had to make, or I wanted to make, every repetition count to its max. And that efficiency allowed me to maximize on the results that I got. So what you can see here is that last year, when I started to experiment with this new method in versus spring, which is now, so the photo that you can see here on the right I've took that 2 weeks ago. I've managed to massively improve my planche position. And for those of you know, it might not look like something, but it's one of the most hardest skills that I've ever worked on, and built a ton of strength I didn't know that I could still build in this position. But also from a mobility perspective, I was always the guy that was very stiff, and I managed throughout the years to make great leaps into it. But it did cost me hours of training per week. But again, I started to scale back. And what you can see here as well is that my bridge, which was still greatly underdeveloped, massively improved simply by making sure that the stimulus, the signal that I gave my body in my training sessions, was precise and at the maximum capacity that I had, which I'm now transitioning into, because that is actually what is going on. Because the truth is about the majority of training programs is that they try to tinker and approach sets, reps, and hours like it's Mecca. But actually, if you flip the script and if you go inside of the body, your physiology doesn't give a flying fuck about how many reps, sets, or hours you do. It just cares about one thing. It cares about a stimulus that is greater than the capacity that you currently have to meet that stimulus or demand. That is the only rule it cares about. So if you want to stimulate growth and adaptation, the only rule here is that you want to make sure that you get as close to your current threshold or capacity or max capacity that you have. If you stay away from it, you're basically saying to the body, hey, it's all good, we don't need to change, we can stay here, and we rest assured. But if you get close to your max, that's actually when you say to the body, guys, we got a problem. This demand is far greater, and if we cannot meet this while being exposed to it for maybe a couple times in a row or more in an accumulated fashion, we have a serious problem. So we need to adapt. And that is actually where we want to go for. And the problem is that with a lot of regular programs is that they build up very slowly towards this peak, which you can see after is train to failure, but you can often experience it on the last 3 repetitions of the final set. So you have to build up maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, I would say even closer to 6 to 8 minutes before you actually get towards that place of, hey, I'm signaling the body to get stronger, get better, to adapt. So this is a very energy demanding process without seeing the results of it. So if you would flip the script on that, then you could actually say that there's maybe a different approach that could greatly cut back your training time, because that's something I didn't even mention. But if you accumulate this for the elements that you're working, the patterns that you're working, 8 minutes, times maybe 50 minutes per movement pattern per week, maybe even more, and having just 20% that is effective, and you also have to travel to the gym, you quickly round out on 4, 5, 6 hours while actually working maybe 90 minutes of productive, stimulating effort. So that is a waste of 3 to 4, maybe 5 hours per week. And combine that with the fatigue that is happening and the less recovery time that you have available, on top of all of the stressors that I just mentioned at the start that everybody faces on a week-to-week basis, your motivation just tanks. And that's also why a lot of people quit. It's not because they lack discipline. It's not because they weren't trying hard enough. It's just the system has them designed to keep running busy, keep spending energy, keep coming back, but without seeing the results that they actually want. It's not designed to make them better. But if we flip it, if we zoom in on only providing a stimulus that drives its max capacity forward, you can cut back all of that traveling time, training time, all of the fluff. So that means actual training time of 20% of what you did prior for 100% of the stimulus, meaning that you can get similar or better results by training far less per week. And as you can see here, what is apparent is that compared to this, if this would count for 8 minutes, then you can see how much time here is left. And if you accumulate that time into spending it on leisure, recovery, providing the body with the necessary nutrients, you quickly will see how much more time the nervous system and the skeletal muscle and connective tissue have to recover, replenish, and come back stronger, versus being faced with recovery time that is less and that you can actually heal from. So, and of course, where the adaptation of a proper signal takes place. So how you can think of this approach is that prior, for a lot of people, they have more of a shotgun approach. You have a lot of repetitions building up towards a small percentage, or trying to have a small percentage of actual stimulation and growth, shotgun. Or you take a precise shot at your max and provide it the necessary stimulus, and then you go out. You go out of the session. So the question then becomes, what do you think yields more results long term? If one is loud and exhausting and the other is quiet but very precise and effective. Because the 20% rule, if you go in with maximum effort, with 20% training time, maximum of the stimulus, maximum time on recovery, it turns you into this sniper. So to give you a brief demo of what this looks like, this is one of the movement patterns that I work on with clients inside of the protocol. This is the one arm chin up, and it's a very powerful vertical pull in which you're strengthening your tissues from a full range of motion, shoulder flexion into partial shoulder extension. And additionally, you work a lot of supporting muscles. So the primary muscles, the lats, the lower traps get very activated here, but also rhomboids. You get a lot of oblique expression in, because you have to rotate. You get a lot of shoulder blade activation. Just a very potent drill. And what you can see here is that if I'm working now at that max stimulus, every part of this repetition, I'm trying to meet my max. So every part, as you can see, I'm going very slow. That's because I'm trying to fight every inch, staying close to that max capacity, all the way until I reach that partial shoulder extension, hand to chest. And then similarly, on the way down, I add in as much weight as I can, because I'm stronger on the eccentric, everybody is. And I'm just trying to resist not falling with everything I've got. And this is extremely intense. But that is also the intent, because you can only do this for, in my case, often 5, 6, 7 repetitions at best. But then I'm so completely gassed out, and I have altered this idea of, okay, I have to do so many sets to get towards that level of stimulus. No, I've turned a repetition into a complete set. Every inch is a repetition where you're trying to provide that max stimulus. 5, 6, 7 repetitions per arm, with other patterns as well, often 5 to 7 reps. And then you're done for the week. Because that stimulation is so extreme, you don't need more. And because you give the body so much more healing time, it heals the tendons, it heals the skeletal muscle, and especially your nervous system gets a break on top of all of the other stressors that it has to manage. So rather than covering a lot of ground, a lot of distance, taking a lot of steps with a lot of reps, sets, and sessions, the distance approach, I like to go for a directionality, a direction approach. You know exactly where you're going, and you're taking the most efficient path to get there. So this is just to give you an idea, and there are other videos on the channel which you can where I'm breaking this down even more, and there will be more coming. But to give you an idea of how powerful this is, because what it comes down to is simply this: what training at max capacity allows or teaches you, it's not about how much time you spend training. It's not about the what. It's about the how you spend your training. That is your ticket out of fitness mediocrity. And I'm fortunate enough to helping dozens of men achieving the same. So what you can see here, very good example of a new client that joined 4 weeks in the protocol. He started with a full push-up position, working on the rings. And 4 weeks later, after done a lot of volume in the past, always getting stuck, elbows that would flare up, also from other exercises, lower back was achy. Now he's doing a tuck planche push-up, no more elbow pain, lower back has vanished. Simply dialing up the intensity and scaling down the accumulated stress. Another great example is Matt. Matt came in with hip impingement. He also had achy knees. And what we did was we were very selective in creating or selecting the movement patterns for his situation after a quick assessment. We've created the program, have him started with a couple of movement patterns per week with maximum intensity. And after 4 weeks, his hip impingement was gone. And after 3 months, he unlocked a ring muscle up, bar muscle up, is now working on handstand push-ups, and he managed to perform almost a full-blown sissy squat with weights after a couple of months in the protocol. Or from a body composition perspective, this was another client who stepped in, and apart from working again on specific movement patterns that are fundamental for the two capacities that we're after, we're also into how can we make sure that we improve your energy levels, work on body composition. And as you can see, he lost a ton of weight while also building size as a result. So these are gentlemen that fathers, busy men, entrepreneurs that have implemented this protocol to the T and seeing amazing results of it, because that's also the pattern. What I see with a lot of the men that I work with is that the fastest progress are not the ones who train the most. It's the ones who are extremely precise, and they all stop treating their body as a furnace, where just you throw a lot of effort into, but they started to treat it more as a system, precise system that listens to a right signal at the right time. And that's when strength improves, flexibility increases, and for a lot of people, pain fades because you're simply increasing the capacity at locally and globally to meet different demands better. And the biggest part, you get your time back. So if you want to know more about this approach and how it can help you to your own unique situation, cut back training time, become more precise, and achieve better results, whether it's to improve your strength, improve flexibility, decrease pain, build an athletic body, that's where I'm here to help. You can follow or check out the link below, and I'll see you in the next one.